pretty simple. Hello, friends. Welcome. It is week 4, lecture 2. Just wanted to say congratulations. You made it to week 4. Sorry I was not here yesterday. I was having lots of technical issues, and CISO stepped in. CISO is a legend here at Coding Dojo, so you guys hopefully were able to attend lecture and or watch it because he is awesome, and he talked all about functions and maps and filters and just fun stuff. So I'm really, really glad that he was able to step in. Again, sorry that I was not able to. I was having some issues with my internet and being able to connect, and I a whole bunch of stuff. So really, really grateful. Just wasn't confident that my Zoom was not staying up at all. Couldn't figure it out. Talked with the internet people. It wasn't my laptop. I tried my other laptop. It didn't work. Just nothing was working yesterday. So glad you guys at least got a great lecture out of it. Just as a reminder, I sent out an email today with your status. Now that email said a whole bunch of stuff, and in bold it said, here's what you have to have in order to continue. Here's what I have for you. So that was in bold. If you have not seen it, please go check your spam folder, because I did send it. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page, because if I've got that you don't have enough assignments, but you think you've turned in enough assignments, then that's an issue, right? Because I don't want you to think that you're good, and then all of a sudden you get like, oh, you have to retake because you didn't do something. So please, please, please make sure you go look at that. Make sure that we are on the same page. If you have done, it was 6 out of 7 assignments, it was 6 out of 8 discussion questions, and you have a passing exam, then you are officially done with Web Fundamentals. You should be very proud. Today is the last day to turn all that in. So if you are still needing to turn in a couple, I would probably say skip class and go do that. Because class is just some bonus material, but this can prevent you from moving forward. So please, please, please make sure you go do that. I've graded every exam that I've gotten that has been submitted today. If you just submitted it, I think I graded my last exam like 2 hours ago. So if you submitted it within the last 2 hours, then I will go in and I'll grade it, and kind of get you something back, but get you a grade back. But everything up to today has been graded. So if you don't have a grade, or I didn't send you an email, or Christina didn't send you an email, then that is a good indication that we don't have anything for you. And just so you know, I've already dealt with a student today that thankfully they listened and took a screenshot, because I was not showing that they even attempted an exam. Oftentimes it shows that you open an exam, but then nothing happened. But they were able to, I don't see anything that they even started an exam. Weird glitch. But because they had a screenshot with a time frame, and I saw the time that they started it yesterday, it's good to go. They can send it to me and I'll grade it. So always, just no matter what stack it is, just take a screenshot. So please, please, please make sure you do that. Any questions about what to expect these next couple days? We are it's today and tomorrow, which is kind of sad, that we are kind of walking through. And then we're done. Tomorrow's pretty simple, pretty easy, can kind of be optional. We can go through some algorithms or do some fun stuff. But any questions, anything that you guys need to understand about what is going on next? Any questions at all? Yep. Give me 1 second. There's something I did forget to bring up. So, so somebody said, why would you use arrow function? What's the purpose? Just preference. So there's going to be some things if you go to like MERN, arrow functions will allow you to do certain things, but it's just a little bit preference in the way it's written. It's a little bit easier to understand. You're going to deal with these things called promises. And so by doing a promise with an arrow function, it makes it look really, really nice. And it's just easier to understand for sure. That being said, can you still accomplish a lot of that with just a normal function or an anonymous function? Yeah, right. ES7, which is the most recent one, is what allows us to like do it, use an arrow function, and then it becomes a little bit more efficient, just very minute efficiency there. But it's really for look and handling promises. It makes it a lot easier to understand. Great question about MERN. MERN is our JavaScript stack. It stands for MongoDB. So that's the M. E is for Express, which is your middleware. R is for React, which is a JavaScript front end library. And N is for Node. And Node is just your backend, JavaScript. So if you're doing a backend for JavaScript, you can do that. So, great question. Okay. Cool. Great. Any other questions? I see also, Lucas, you're saying that you just got to go over everything, get better at it. That is the story of our lives. That's how it always goes. That is, I have to constantly be going over things, doing things, or else like I can forget it. So if that's what you're feeling, like, oh my gosh, I just have to always be doing stuff, that unfortunately is part of it. But I promise it will get better. It does get better. It's practice, really. Is how it goes. So any other questions? You had to reread everything to do your exam. Yeah. That's okay. But the fact that you did it is impressive. And the fact that you got it done is incredible. So you should be very proud of that. Cool. Give me just 1 second. I need to get something. Okay. So I just put this in the chat. This is our end of stack survey. And it's not my favorite thing. And I'm so sorry that this feels like it's a waste of class. They asked me to do this and give like 10 minutes in class, or I usually just give 5 because I want to not waste enough time. So I'm going to, sorry, I totally spaced. I have to do this on Wednesdays of weeks 4. So I'm going to give 5 minutes that if you guys are okay with it, if you guys can do this and fill out the survey, that's really helpful. Just so you know, this is what the survey does. You guys get a lot of surveys and I fully understand. I am not a fan of surveys. I think we send too many and I'm sorry for that. What this survey does is it does a couple of things. It's a reflection of Christina and I. And so most importantly, what it does is allows us to see what could we have done differently. There's different ways we could have communicated, or I could have communicated, or I could have done something that would have improved your experience. I want to know that, right? Because that helps me be a better instructor. And every year in every stack, I am aiming, the surveys in the chat, and I just did it again, Darius, but every stack I'm aiming to be better. And so this allows me to get your actual feedback, and I do take this, and no problem. I just put it in chat again, Darius. I do take this information and then I try to implement that for the next stack. Same thing with Christina. There's going to be a TA section for you as well. Also, the things that we are doing well, things that were helpful for you, the way we communicated or what we did or how I taught or how Christina helped. Those are really good for us to know and understand so that way we can keep doing those. And then also, and this is not pandering, please, one thing I will say is please put how you feel, right? If you feel like I was the worst instructor you've ever had, that's fine. You are entitled to that opinion. Only thing I ask is that you give some critical, like if there's criticalness, give some feedback with it. So that way I know that I can, get better. And I fully understand that there's things I could do better. So if you do so one thing I ask is if you do this, it is really helpful because it helps me know what I could do better and or what we're doing good at. Secondly, our bosses see this. And so this is sort of our KPI. And so based off of how you guys are experiencing the dojo, that definitely helps us. And at the end of the year, we sort of get, did students overall have a good time in our stack? Not just a good time, like I'm funny or any sort of jokes, but like, did you have a good experience? And are we creating a high level education? Vega, I wish I could give out snacks. That would be the most elite. except I eat weird snacks. I just ate a guava. I don't know if you guys have ever had a guava fruit, but they're pretty unique and odd. And I had a friend in town and we ate a guava and it was weird, but they are tasty. So if you guys can, we're going to give it 5 minutes for you to do that. And then I like to do a little bit of background music. So give me just 1 second and I'm going to put on some background music and it rocks real hard. And then if you guys can do that, we'll just give a quick 5 minutes to do that. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. But we will kind of move on now and get started with the actual lecture. Today I wanted to tell you about Bootstrap and kind of give you just some basics of how Bootstrap works. And really where this is going to come in handy is like forms and buttons. And so if you guys are wondering, there are, if you guys hate, so let me start with this. If you hate CSS and styling, then don't worry. There is plenty of ways for you to not have to deal with that. Super transparently, I don't love CSS and styling. It's not my gifting. I am partly colorblind, so the whole styling thing sucks. But I just am not a creative person and don't enjoy that. I like kind of the back end work of this. And so introducing that, there's lots of people who are that way. And so there's lots of material that you can use. You can use things like Tailwind. You can use Bootstrap. There's lots of basic like tools or modules or packages that you can bring in that will come with a lot of pre-built stuff. And introducing that is Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a way, and it's just one of many. So again, if you wanted to use Tailwind, there's a ton of different CSS stuff out there. But if you wanted to use something like that, you can feel free to do that. I like to use Bootstrap. I think it's pretty simple. And I like to use it for forms because I think it looks really nice, really, really fast. And so we're going to go over how that goes, but just know that the same kind of concept works with Tailwind and all these other ones. So the way that a lot of these work is in CSS, we have a whole bunch of ways that we can do some selectors. Can anybody remember what are some different selectors we can use for CSS? Anybody remember what our selectors are? What are ways that we can target stuff in CSS? Yeah, IDs and classes, right? Yeah, that's like a main way that we can do it. Well, what's really cool is Bootstrap is just a bunch of pre-built classes. That's it, right? And so instead of you having to, like, let's do components. So instead of having to build all the CSS for a class for, let's say, a button, right? And to make it the CSS to make it red, when you hover over, it looks like this, and have this perfect little rounded area, and you have the white lettering. Instead of having to do that, all you have to do is attach the class to it, and we'll attach actual Bootstrap, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. But it gives us all the code, right? It has all the pre-built, it's like pre-built CSS. So instead of you having to build it yourself, which that's what we teach you so that way you can build it yourself, but this is all pre-built, right? So if I wanted this one, all I have to say is BTN primary, right? I give it button, and button is going to give it sort of the shape. And then if I want this color, it's primary. And all the CSS is done for me. I don't have to do anything. You just do this. Yep, I'm happy to drop this link here in the chat. So it is just the from a high level, the way you think about it is all you've got is just a bunch of different classes that you can apply on components, and you bring it in just like a normal file, just like you do a CSS file. And so what we do with Bootstrap is you can have JavaScript as well. Like if you want some functionality, it's probably a little bit too advanced because it also uses jQuery some. which I'm not a huge fan of. So we're going to just deal with CSS, but all you do is you go to Bootstrap, this guy, you just type in Bootstrap and it'll take you here. And there's a couple different versions. So let's see, there's a newer version of Bootstrap. Let's go to this. Perfect. I think this is 5.3. Yeah. So either one works. For 5.3, they're the same, but they have great documentation. And so what we'll do is we're going to grab this information. We can, so see here how we have this guy right here. We're just going to grab the information. If we're doing 5, it's this way. 4 has it built out in just CSS or JavaScript. This seems like we have it all. It's just all in one. But let's come here and I'm going to create an index.html. And in the same way that we would attach a CSS file, I'm going to attach this script. Or I guess in the same way we do a JavaScript file, but they do the same thing. Right? They're both going to provide, this can provide our CSS. This is just loading our code, loading all the classes, having all the availability for us to deal with that. Perfect. Cool. Make sure that I attach the right ones. Let's do this. I'm actually go back. So I actually want a link. I don't want the script. I think I got the JavaScript. Link. Nope. I'm going back to 4. So I've not used 5, I always use 4. So I'm just gonna go back here. Okay. So here in this introduction, I'm gonna put this in the chat. You just grab this guy right here. Copy. And you come here and you paste. Perfect. So now that I've done this, I have access to everything, right? I have access to all of the different classes that I can build and make it look really, really nice. So this is how we connect it. We just come here, we add this link, and then now we have access to our CSS. If you wanted to bundle it, I suppose you can do this. I usually just deal with CSS, from being honest. So just do this right here. And then now we have access to all of Bootstrap. Now, there's some main things to know with Bootstrap just from a high level. The first and foremost is that Bootstrap is built on a grid system. Now, what that means is however wide your screen is, or however wide you make your application, it will slice it into 12 equal columns. So what it will do is it will, if you're on a phone, it'll make it into 12 equal columns. If you're on, it'll just give you 12. They're not going to be equal. But it's just going to basically slice your screen into 12 equal columns. Now, what's good about that is it makes it what we call responsive, meaning that, if the screen gets bigger, well, it's still sliced in 12 columns. So then everything just sort of expands. And if it gets smaller, it's still sliced in 12 equal columns. And then so that way we can still operate and it can adjust, right, and become responsive. And so it's a really big thing with it is the responsiveness is built in, but it is built on a grid. And so knowing that, hey, if we've got 12 here, right, this is the big thing with positioning. In the same way that if a parent is 500 pixels and you've got 3 children and they're each 200, they can't all be by each other, right? Because the children's width cannot be greater than the parents. Same sort of thing. If we assign a width via columns, which we'll see here in a second, if it equals more than 12, then they can't be on the same line, right? If I've got one that takes up 5 columns and one that takes up 8 columns, well, it's not going to work because if I collectively see how many columns there are, then it's going to be too big for Bootstrap, right? So 12 is your magic number. And we'll see what that means here in a second. There's also different things when it comes to how we set it up. Now, if we just say dot container, now that's a word that I told you guys to use for a div, right? With a class of container. What this does is this is the dynamic portion. Now, if you remember here where it says the viewport, right? And we're getting a width equals device width. Well, what this is doing is based off the class we assign, it is saying, hey, if whatever's reported back is less than 576 pixels, we're going to take up 100% of it. If it's greater than that, then if it's small, like if it's a small screen, then it's 540, 720, 960, 14, 1140, right? And so based off of the size, it allows us to make something bigger or smaller based off of however container we have. And so what I like to do is, and it's all in one, and again, their tools are really, really, really good, like their documentation. So I usually just do container, but you can do container fluid if you want the entire screen. And so what you do is I always just say dot container. This is how you start container. And it's important that you, container, did I say that right? Container. Yep. It's important it's right. If I don't spell it right, obviously the class in our CSS doesn't know what I'm associating, so then it doesn't work. So I start with this container. Now, I can remember that I've got 12 columns. So what I want to do is I want to create something that says, you know, I want to create a registration and a login form. So that's what I want to do tonight with a nice button. And I want them on the same side, right? I want them one next to another, just like you would in a normal website. So the way this works is because I'm dealing with my columns, right? I need to make sure that whenever I define them, whenever I define my forms, that they're not greater. If I want them side by side, that the totality of my size is not greater than 12. So if I come here to content, actually it's components, I'm going to go to form because that's what I'm dealing with, right? I want to make a form. And you can see that we can make really nice forms pretty quickly. Like if you guys remember, our HTML forms are kind of gross. They're kind of ugly looking. I don't have to do a lot in order for it to do that. I just say, hey, form group. And then it groups these together. And then with my input, I say form control. So that's just the class. And it makes my input look really nice. And I can do different things, right? So if I like wanted form text muted, right? Makes it see this like nice little, we'll never share your email with anyone else. We can do that, right? This is all Bootstrap. Bootstrap allows us to do all of this stuff. Looking like, if I'm looking at this, that means each input and label is in a form group. Okay, perfect. Form check. If I wanted a check mark to do like that, it looks a lot nicer than the check marks we have. And then again, we have a button that we can do type submit, BTN primary, right? So this is just a basic form. Now you can do a lot of stuff. If you want to deal with form controls, you can. If you wanted to update a file, this is all you do, right? If you want to deal with sizing and it shows you, there's different things that you can do. Remember, you can apply multiple classes to an input. So we can have form control and form control large, makes it a larger input, the default and the smaller input. You can just do read-only inputs. You can do a lot of stuff. If you wanted to have a range, you could do that. If you wanted to have like a disabled one, you can. Checkbox and radios, to put everything you want to do. Here's a disabled radio, so they can't click it. You can do a lot of stuff, right? And so this allows us to really make nice forms really quickly, really easily without very much to deal with. But I see this and I say, okay, form row. And I see this whole idea of row side by side. Okay, I'm going to keep that in my mind here, right? But you can make a little bit more complicated stuff like this. And this looks kind of production ready. Like if I were to go into something and then they had a formula like this, it'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. The nice thing about it is you can copy this code, take it over. I open it up and I have the code. Doesn't do anything right now, but I have the code, right? I have access to it. I just copy and paste it. And then I could go in and I could change it based on how I wanted to deal with this. If I wanted this to say, you know, first name and last name, or however I wanted to do it, I could. And Bootstrap's great because it just provides a lot of this code for you. And you can kind of tweak it and make it however you want it to look, right? And you can adjust it to however you want. If you want to have this cool little @ symbol and what you can do, it allows you to do quite a bit there. So it's a really popular tool. So let's actually build one without, I'm not going to do this, but cool. So we're going to have a form. And I want it to be, this is going to be my registration form, right? So I want it to be my registration form. And if I wanted to add some different CSS, I could do this, right? I could have like you can have a CSS file and it read both. That's okay. But for right now, I want it just to be a registration form. And I want it to be about a third of my page. So what I'm going to say is column, medium, 4. Let's walk through this. This is saying, hey, this is a medium size, which is a default. Like I think you could just also put column 4. And this is saying, hey, I want it to take up 4 out of my 12 columns, which is about a third. Cool. Now I've got a form. And what this will look like is, remember we had that div that was a form group. It's going to have some sort of label. I think and then we'll say first name. And then I've got an input. Now, if you want to do the fast stuff to like basically add in classes and stuff with the input, you have to put a colon and then let's say text. And then you say dot form control. And I'm just going off of what we read here, right? Form control. So I'm just going off of this. I mean, obviously I use Bootstrap, so I know, but I'm just going off of these, what this documentation is giving me. Just these sort of basic ones, right? Form control. And I just wanted to look normal, so we just give it a class of form control. Cool. We don't need to give it a name. We can, so we can say like first name. Perfect. And just real quickly, let's look and see what it looks like. If I come here and I refresh. Cool. I've got a label and I've got a first name. And you see that, cool. Looks nice. You see the blue, it's highlighted. These are things that just because I did form control and said that this was a form, this is automatically built in, right? I can build this out again. I just did option or alt shift down and that did it twice, or that doubled it. So here I just say last name. Come here. Cool. Maybe I want on top of my form, maybe I want an H3 that says register here. Let's see, this is probably going to put it in a different spot, but that's okay. Yep. Register here. Perfect. And then maybe I just want an email and a password. Now I can still in here, email. I can still say email here. So it kind of is that sort of built in within my form. To make sure kind of that built-in validation. And then this last one is password. I did find out I used a little tool the other day that I'll show you guys real fast. Is if you ever have password, it's going to look like this, right? And oftentimes you can't copy this and it's so annoying. What I did the other day was just come here because I needed to copy a password and because it was built in, but I didn't know. And then I just changed this to text and then it just gave it to me. So if that ever happens to you and you need to copy a password, but it's like kind of protected, You just go in and change it and it'll actually show it. And then you just refresh and it's still password again. But just a little, I did that the other day because I needed it and it would not copy to save my life. So, okay. So our form looks really nice. Now, just as a sort of other HTML, if I were to just do this, I just want to give you guys a reminder of like form, label, and then inside of my label, name, and then I'd have an input of text. Let's say that this is my other one. So this is the difference, right? This is what by default it looks like. And by just adding in our classes here, went from this to this. By just doing a little bit, right? So much, much, much easier, much, much, much nicer. So especially when you're dealing with these other languages, it's a nice way to make your code look a little bit better with very minimal effort. That's why I like Bootstrap. Cool. And the last thing I need to do for this is I just need to do a button, right? So it's button and then btn dot btn danger is going to get me the red one. So submit. And then got a nice little red button here that if I hover over, it gets a little bit darker. Again, all I did was say, hey, column medium 4. It takes up a fourth of my screen or a third of my screen because it's, 1/3 of 12. Now, if I wanted to have them side by side, I'm actually going to move this into here. So it's associated with my form. And I wanted another one, right? I want to have another form that's a login. And I'm going to have an H3. H3. It says login here. And what does a login typically have? It's got a form group. Maybe it's got an email. And it's got a password. And then maybe a button. Perfect. Now I didn't say its size here, so I can say class call medium 4. Let's make it look the same. But we see that they're on top of each other, right? Because still by default, these are block, right? By default, this form is a block. And so if you remember when we looked at the documentation, oops, if I wanted something on a side, we had that keyword of row, right? And you can sort of think about it like when we have our display flex, sort of the same thing. If we put something in a row, as long as the columns are not too big for the parent, then it'll automatically do it for us. So if within this I say dot row, and I take this X, and I put my entire form in here. Now we get this. Right? And if you look at it, these are the same size because they're both column medium 4. Right? So the same size. And so if there's another third, then we can do that right here, right? but I want these separated a little bit. So what I can do is say something, there's another class called offset 2. What this should do is move that over. It moves it over 2 columns, right? Again, in thinking that there's 12 columns here. When I say offset, and this is all in the documentation, that's saying, hey, move it 2. But in the same way that if you remember when we were dealing with display flex, in the same way that if you had margin that was too big, plus the size of the children were too large, it wouldn't work, right? This operates in the same way. Because this is 4, that's fine. But if these were both 6, and I was trying to offset 2, it's not going to work. Because they're both 6, which takes up my 12 columns. And if I'm adding on 2 more, I'm saying, hey, move this over 2, then that's now 14, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to push it because it's now too big for the parent, push that element down, and then it offsets it 2. Right? And so this is still 6. This is 2 columns. This whole distance is 2 columns worth. So it's offset the extra 2. So we got to make sure that when we're dealing with this, if I said 5 and 5, that works just fine, right? 5 plus 5 plus 2 is 12. So it takes up my entire screen, or takes up my entire container. Now, if I said my container was fluid, now what this does is it takes up my entire screen, right? And if I see how these change based on the size, these get smaller, right? Because it's still taking up a portion of the screen. It's still taking up 6 columns or 5 columns, sorry. Now the columns just look, they're just different, right? So that allows it to be dynamic. So there's a lot of stuff we can do, a ton of stuff we can do here. Really cool things where we can do like a carousel. So if you wanted images to basically have slides, like if you want to build this in, you can have that. Something like this. And it's just an image and you just say, hey, yep, cool. I add this in, I add in my images and I can go back and forth. You can have this little indicator portion here as well. So that way it highlights, again, it's doing that all for you. You don't have to do anything. If you wanted to have captions, it's all built out. So you can build out some really cool things pretty quickly. Got a Jumbotron to deal with that. There's a cool one called a modal. So if you, basically this is similar to what we've been doing, right? But a modal will just pop up. Like it's basically a pop-up. So here, if I've got this live demo, I click it, this is a modal, right? It's kind of like my alert. I can do something. I can save changes. I can do whatever. But if I wanted something to pop up like, uh-oh, your password's not long enough, or uh-oh, you forgot to do this. Are you sure you want to proceed? Or you forgot to save. Are you sure you want to leave? Something like that. I can do that just through copying this code, and it allows me to do that. Virus download complete. Exactly. If you had long content, you could do that. Terms and conditions that nobody will read, you could do that. Lots of stuff that you can do. Dealing with nav bars. So this is a lot easier, again, than our nav bar that we're building, right? And you have the ULs or the A tag. What do? And it's just, well, you just do this. Copy and paste, and then you can delete and change. You can add in drop downs in your nav bar. So a lot of this functionality is really, really nice to have. And let's say that this was just a link somewhere else. You just change that here, right? Something else. The reference of where it goes. So when this clicks, it goes to a different page or something like that. But it's a really easy way to make it look really, really nice. But the main things to know is when you're dealing with these, your parent, you define the size in the same way that whenever we do display flex, your parent decided the size. And then based off of that, the children kind of conform. In this case, we need to define sizes and how many of our 12 columns this is going to take up. Can we offset, which gave me some space, some more space from the columns. With this form group, these are just classes. And again, there's just basically from a very, very low level, there's just a CSS file that we're implementing and we're downloading, right? That's just a style sheet. That's got all this information. This is it. There's a file looking. This is it. So somebody did all this for us. We don't have to deal with it. This is their CSS sheet. We don't have to do any of it. But you can see that there's borders, there's all kinds of different things. And we just get access to it for free. How they make their money, I actually don't know. But they do, I guess, because or else they wouldn't do it. From Twitter, which I guess is now X, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. But regardless, Bootstrap's a really cool tool. Are there any questions on Bootstrap and how it operates, how it works? Any thoughts on it? Pre-made CSS, incredible. Yeah, there's another one called Tailwind. Christina, do you use Tailwind?
I do not. I hear a lot of really good things about that one and Material UI.
Yeah, Material UI is great with like React. Tailwind, I think, is becoming the most popular. I've never used it. I've never used it, but I've heard it's quickly becoming like the move. But
Oh
I've
yeah,
not
I saw
ever.
somebody did a project with it and it looked amazing.
I mean, already I'm like looking at this. I'm like, this is beautiful. Like just their website. No offense to Bootstrap, but like it's kind of dull compared to this. This is dope. The background and the grid and the gradient. This is really pretty. Looks like it's building like you build a class and then it brings that in. Well, same sort of thing though. Oh, so its whole thing is you basically in the way that we just in what I'm reading here. And whenever we define BTN, then it says, okay, let me build in our CSS, it's going to build the BTN. And so with Bootstrap, and this is the reality, is you're bringing in the entire library, right? So even if you don't have the Jumbotron code or you're not using it, it's still bringing all that CSS in. So you're kind of just bringing in a bunch of stuff where it's saying, hey, you don't need to, you only ship and i.e. put into production only the code that you need, which is kind of cool. Huh. I should definitely look into this. It's really cool. Beautiful. New pin, yeah, absolutely. Any other questions on Bootstrap or just, I guess, other CSS tooling as well? Again, I would encourage you to kind of dive into documentation. Now that you guys are getting into your actual languages, because technically HTML and CSS are not languages. I can't remember what HTML technically is, but it's not like a language. So you can't be like an HTML programmer because everybody has to use HTML. Now that you guys are getting into it, I would encourage you to find these kind of faster tools to make something look nice with less work, right? Because what you're going to want to deal with is the functionality, being able to do certain things, being able to like deal with your backend. You don't want to spend any time really on CSS. Like whenever I teach Python or Mern or JavaScript, the backend JavaScript, I just say like, hey, I don't care what it looks like as long as it works and it's functioning. Because oftentimes you're going to have a team that's got your backend dealing with your APIs, your databases, and you're going to have your front end that makes it look really pretty. So I'm not that guy that can make it look really pretty. I mean, Tailwind does apparently. But that being said, uh, it's just an easy thing to like, okay, I'm not going to make it look super pretty, but hey, this looks a lot nicer than if I just did this, right? This looks gross. So cool. That's all I have. I just wanted to walk through Bootstrap with you guys. Tomorrow will be our last class. We'll do a little graduation fun thing. Darius, feel free to just Google Bootstrap and or Tailwind CSS. They will come up. So we'll do that and have one more class, and then we'll be done with Web Fundamentals. You guys will receive an email on Friday from your new instructor. You did receive, and this is an important thing, you did receive an email that said, hey, this is your next stack. Just need to confirm. We need to know that immediately. So if you are like, yep, I want Python, or no, I want to switch to JavaScript, or I was in JavaScript, now I want to do Python. We just need to know that by end of day tomorrow. So that way we can put you in the right class. So I'll send out an email tomorrow to make sure that everybody knows that as well. So other than that, does anybody have anything else? Going once, going twice. Make sure, Darius, you check your spam, because I saw that they sent it to everybody in the class. The SEMs sent it, so it wasn't from me. It was from your student experience manager. So, okay, I will stop the recording.